Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Not Your Average Josh, and this is my last movie review today of the Indiana Jones franchise, at least up to this point. The new one coming out, The Dial of Destiny, is what I am reviewing today. I reviewed all the other films. There should be a playlist up on my channel. Indiana Jones movie review series should be up on my channel, as I said. Look, after Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I was just hoping this was going to be better than that. Honestly, going into that, I think that's what most people were feeling. You're not going to get back to those first three movies and the vibe and the tone and just the feeling that you have, or at least that I have when watching those movies. After watching Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, is like, okay, if Spielberg couldn't do it, coming back 19 years later, I just don't think James Mangold's going to do it. But I do like James Mangold. I really appreciate a lot of what he's done. Logan, I really did love that movie. 3:10 to Yuma, also really did like that one. I haven't seen all his total filmography, but I do really appreciate the style and the way he directs. So I was really interested in what he would do with this movie. But before I get into this review, I do want to say, if you're watching this, hit that like button if you do enjoy this video, and also leave a comment down below if you have any thoughts on this movie or any other movies in the Indiana Jones franchise, or just anything you want to put down there. And also hit that subscribe button as well if this is your first time watching any of my videos, or if you're a returning viewer as well. As I always say, any support is very much appreciated. It's still just a small channel here that I'm just doing when I have the time and just for fun, so I appreciate it all. You can also follow me on TikTok and add me on Snapchat, where I will post content similar to this, but for the most part, again, my content will be here on this YouTube channel, Not Your Average Josh. So let's go ahead and get into this final movie as of right now in the Indiana Jones film franchise, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Now, as I said, this movie this time is directed by James Mangold, and this time the writing credits go to Jez Butterworth and John Henry Butterworth, along with, again, David Koepp from Kingdom of Crystal Skull, James Mangold also, George Lucas, of course, and Philip Kaufman also credited as well for the characters involved. And one of the things that was kind of worrying me already with this movie was the runtime with this. It's longer than any Indiana Jones movie, at least I believe, as listed, 2 hours and 34 minutes. And you definitely feel the length in this movie, more than even in Kingdom of Crystal Skull for me. In terms of just the length, just generally how I felt watching it, I definitely felt it more in this movie, despite it being a better movie than Kingdom of Crystal Skull. I do think overall the writing is much better. I do think it feels more like an Indiana Jones film, like at the heart and the core of it. The fun that is there in this movie, I definitely felt way more involved and engaged. I thought the story was way more interesting. Mads Mikkelsen in here. There's a lot more there for him to chew on in the writing. And the way they deal with time in this movie, I did like as well. Didn't go in too many crazy directions where it was like, what's going on here, especially when you compare it to some comic book movies coming out recently and all that. It definitely is still grounded for what the story is, I feel like. And if you do not know, this movie is about Indy races against time to retrieve a legendary artifact that can change the course of history. Pretty basic description there, but that's really kind of the main premise here. You have Mads Mikkelsen's character along with some of his henchmen that they have a little opening sequence in this movie that shows a past sequence with Indiana Jones. And one thing I will say about this opening sequence immediately, people are already going to comment on it a lot, the effects. Look of Harrison Ford, they use de-aging, I believe, instead of the deep faking from what I've heard. And it's very noticeable at times. Like, there is times where it does take me out for the most part, like any of the action moments, or a lot of them, especially near the beginning of this opening sequence, which feels like 10 to 15 minutes. I don't know how much or how long it actually was, but definitely feels very elongated. And then when you see some of the effects, it definitely looks pretty bad at times, just being very noticeable. Not necessarily just how bad it is. Like, it's good, the de-aging, but it's still, it feels like you're watching a video game at times. It doesn't feel real, and so it kind of takes me out. Has this artificial look to it, and that was a little troublesome there. But also, the thing that was really even more noticeable than just the look of it was the sound. Like, you heard Harrison Ford's older voice. Like, it didn't seem like it was the Indiana Jones around Last Crusade times, which this was kind of taking place in a couple years after that. So, but I thought what they did with it, what was good about it, I was enjoying very much, and I thought it was pretty entertaining. And then how this whole Dial of Destiny comes about, I thought it made sense enough, and it was something I could get on board with, and I was just very, again, much more interested in the villains and just what was going on than in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which I was just really happy about right off the bat. And I do think with the opening sequence being so long, that also lent itself to the runtime being so long. I just do think at times they could have cut certain things, especially through the middle of this movie. There is just certain moments with dialogue where I found myself not checking out, but just kind of be like, this is okay right now, but it could be better. It could be moving along a little quicker here. Like, I get what we're doing here, where we're going. This dialogue isn't interesting me as much as some others are. So the writing is hit or miss at times, but when it is hitting, it's very solid. And a lot of the sequences in this movie are very fun to watch. You have Indiana Jones chase through a city at a certain point where he's on horseback and then he's on his little carts, and it was all pretty much very believable, to be honest, with what they made old Indy do in this movie. It really did. It wasn't anything too out there. There are some moments, of course, where you're going to be like, okay, come on. But for the most part, actually, I thought it was pretty consistently realistic for what these movies are, again. We felt that fun, though, throughout this movie. And I already mentioned Mads Mikkelsen. You also have Boyd Holbrook in this movie. He's playing a sort of a henchman for Mads Mikkelsen, working with him and trying to get this Dial of Destiny. One thing I have been seeing already, some people, I didn't realize that there was such a kind of a discourse over this, I guess, with Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character. I thought she was fine overall. Wasn't overly interesting. I understood what they were doing with her character, the connection they had with her being the daughter of one of Harrison Ford's longtime friend colleagues, Toby Jones as Bass. They have a little relationship that they kind of build with that, and I understood what they were going for with it. You had this whole parallel with Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, Helena, and how her dad was very much into his own work and didn't pay attention to her as much as she thought she could have been paid attention to. And she was also very interested in the things as well, though her dad was in. So you have the same parallel with Indy and his dad, kind of bringing back the themes of The Last Crusade into this movie, which I did like overall for the most part. I understood what they were doing, and I thought it delivered for the most part for me in terms of that. Now, the thing I've been seeing, though, is that people are saying that Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character was annoying, and that some people thought that also that it took away from the narrative that they could have given more to with Indy in this movie. The fact that he's dealing with everything going on with Marion, and the fact that he has a little bit rocky wires going on with that relationship she has with her, and then everything that happens with his son, which I won't spoil or anything if you haven't seen it. But there's a little family dynamic going on, a lot of drama with Indy that they really don't touch on much at all in this. And I think they definitely could have a lot more. I will agree with that. For me, I thought Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, Helena, she was fine in this, and I didn't have a problem with the way her character was written. As some people were saying she's an asshole, or she's just not a good character, she's not likable, and I can see that. She was just kind of in the middle for me. She was cool. I liked her presence in this movie fine enough. I saw what they were doing with it. That's kind of where I stand on that. But I will say, yes, I do think they bring in Marion here very little in this movie, and again, with everything going on, they kind of they give you little nuggets throughout this movie of what could be going on, and then some reveals of what's going on. You're like, oh man, they should be doing with this a lot more. Like, how is Indy not in an even more fucked up emotional place because of everything that's going on? You understand when he is like going through some emotional shit in this movie. You understand because of what you find out. I thought they could have definitely expounded on his emotional state a little more in this, and to add more to the emotional weight of how this movie ends. Now with the third act of this movie, I thought it was pretty well done. Like, I liked it all right. It definitely felt a little bit anticlimactic. Like, it wasn't like this, like, oh man, this is the ending of this franchise with Harrison Ford in it. This is a great crescendo moment. It was fine. It was better than I thought Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and that ending of that, obviously right out the bat. But to me, I mean, the first three movies, I think, still have better moments near the end of the movie than this one does. It's not as memorable as I think it could have been. I liked what they did with it. It made sense. It was cool what they did with it. It was a nice creative concept to go with, but it wasn't like a huge, great, again, climactic moment that you might be expecting in this movie. But emotionally, where we end with Indy, I like what they went for. I do like where we end off with him in a kind of a happier moment than he was in at the beginning of this movie when it starts. The directing even just was more interesting. There was more fun in it. Again, it felt way more in the direction of what Indiana Jones films feel like, especially if you go off the original trilogy. And I did have a fairly good time overall. Like, I don't know how much if I will honestly ever just be like, I want to go back and revisit this movie, but definitely more of a pull than, like, in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is I don't really ever care to watch that movie again, to be honest. I didn't hate it, didn't completely dislike it, but you can go look at my thoughts on that movie if you want to. You also have Ethan Isidore as Teddy in this movie, as a younger kid that's involved in this movie. He is being taken care of by Helena, and he was also, again, similar with Helena, just a nice presence for me in the movie, but I'm just kind of in the middle of it. It was fine. He was good in it, playing this kid. But there is a moment, I will say, in this movie that's completely ridiculous for me. Like, they have this moment at the end of the movie. This is not going to be too much of a spoiler or anything in terms of the plot, okay? But he's this kid who I guess has been studying how to fly, okay? And when this movie is taking place in, I believe it's like 1969, I believe. I believe is when this movie takes place in. This kid apparently has been studying how to fly. He studied all the technical aspects of it and whatever. But he's never flown. And there's a moment in this movie where he is required to fly, never flown before. There's this huge-ass storm going on, and he somehow does it and seems like he catches on way too easy. And it just completely, it kind of took me out a little bit. It wasn't as bad as like the nuke in the fridge and everything and Crystal Skull, but it was a little like, what the fuck? Like they mention it right before he's like, I've never flown before. And he somehow is alone in this thing, flying this plane through a huge-ass, crazy, like hurricane-like storm. And it was just really unbelievable. I was like, there's just no way. How did he do this shit? You have another dude who's like asleep for part of the time on the thing, but he never seems like he gets up and like takes over much for him, to be honest, for me. So that was one moment. The really one moment in this movie that's completely unbelievable is really that one that sticks out to me. In terms of just being like, really, did that really just happen? But not too much of that in this movie. I will say that's also another plus compared to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But that's my main thoughts. I'm going to give Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny a 6.5 out of 10. I think just as an action-adventure movie, this movie is pretty well done. I think as an Indiana Jones film, still not mediocre like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was, but I think it's still, of course, it's not on that level of any of the first three, but I think it's definitely closer. It's what you would hope to expect more of from a story with an older Indiana Jones involved. I think the emotional aspects, they at least touched on it more, even if they didn't expand on it like I would still hope they would, with everything going on with Marion and then his son dealing with it in this movie. But it still definitely touched on it more. Again, had that fun of Indiana Jones movies that I want from these movies. It had that adventure at times. I was definitely way more engaged and interested with everything going on. Just overall, much better job to me on pretty much every aspect with this movie, I will say, for the most part. But what do you guys think? Have you seen this movie? Do you not care to see it? Are you done with this franchise? Have you ever begun with this franchise? What do you think on anything pertaining to Indiana Jones or whatever you want to leave down there? Leave it in the comments section. Also hit that like button if you did enjoy this video. And also hit that subscribe button as well if this is your first time watching any of my videos. Or if you're a returning viewer, again, all support is very much appreciated. Also follow me on TikTok and add me on Snapchat, where I will post content similar to this. But for the most part, my content will be here on this YouTube channel, Not Your Average Josh. So again, I appreciate all the support. If you watch any of my other reviews in this Indiana Jones movie review series, I thank you for that as well. I would like to review more TV shows. Sometimes it's hard, with all the new movies that come out, especially now they're back on a more of a regular schedule. We'll see what happens with the writer's strike and potentially an actor's strike that's going on. Or when there's a lot of movies coming out, it's harder for me to get to these TV shows, but I would definitely love to. But anyways, I'll be looking for plenty of more videos very soon, as always, and I appreciate all the support. But that'll be it for now. I will talk to you guys later.